Now go.
Okay.
Welcome to the November 1st, 2023 meeting of the Lyman Planning Board. This meeting will come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes for an executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and will go all the exhibits that are offered. If the board votes for an executive session, the reason for the same shall be stated. Please notify the board chair if you are having difficulty seeing or hearing. This meeting is being recorded for YouTube. Nisha, since the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinance or ordinances. After the board votes on the merits of each project, it will prepare a written opinion which will be forwarded within 7 days. The board works for a prepared agenda. We'll be considering this meeting's items in the following order. Roll call, Mary Monin, 382 Goodwin's Mills Road, map 11, lot 122. Rustic Greens, Key 70, 7 Rabbit Run, map 12, lot 7. CO updates, minutes, old business, and mail. All right.
I'm gonna do a roll call.
We'll do a roll call. Kelly?
Kelly Demers, 10 Partridge Way.
Don Hernan, 33 Murphy's Way.
Joe Wagner, 26 Day Road.
Remember where I live.
Rob T2, 357 Walker Road.
Cecile Dupuy, 53 Chapel Shores Road.
Kevin Bear, 64 Lebanon Pond Road.
Bill Single, 8 Single Lane.
But before we get started, I got some Halloween candy here I'd like to get rid of. So I'm sorry. It's fresh. It's fresh. It's really good, except my stomach doesn't need it. And please, if you can take it, is what I'm saying. Take it.
It's
Take it.
last month's.
Just saying. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the first item is reviewing Caleb Johnson, Shannon Richards site plan review.
I believe you're reviewing the notice of decision.
Notice of decision, yes.
The proposed notice of decision.
Well, we got that in here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is the same one? Yeah, I think it's the same one.
I asked the town attorney to attend this evening because you had some questions. I didn't know if you could answer your questions.
Yep.
And you could proceed. Is that how you want to begin?
Yep. Is it so that the town attorney had some issue with the language of finding 14? That was, I'm sorry, the findings and conclusion that it was too unspecific or?
Yeah, I mean, Brad Moore and Burton Clegg. I was brought into it by Brenda, who said that the board wanted her to consult with me on this. My understanding is that you had already made a decision, already granted the site plan approval. She was the one who questioned whether what was going on there was within the approval that had been granted, which approved the use of the property for professional offices. And my understanding is that she suggested that you revise your decision, or how are we here today? Is it-
We didn't get that far really because I think they wanted, my question was the category that we approve the site plan on, how does it fit into the ordinance? That's what I needed for my enforcement portion of that.
And I know that the owners are here with their lawyer, and he and I spoke a little bit earlier this evening, spoke with Brenda. I went through the ordinance myself and the decision just to kind of familiarize myself with it. What I am told from Brenda was that there's the activities going on there include like boat refurbishing or some growing of plants. I think the applicants could probably talk to that. Her major question was, is this professional offices? I do have some concerns about it, I'll be honest. Professional offices is defined in the ordinance, was, what you typically would think of, lawyers, doctors, those type of things. It is, I'll admit though, it is, it does have some openings or a little bit of, some wiggle room. It says offices where services are provided that require specialized training or professional certification. So it doesn't require professional certification necessarily, just specialized training.
Mhm.
And then it goes on and says, including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Okay, so including but not limited to is important, and I'll get into that in a minute.
Mhm.
Accountant, appraiser, attorney, architect, landscape architect, engineer, surveyor, stockbroker, physician, dentist, chiropractor, psychologist, and optometrist. Limited goods or merchandise may be sold. So let me give you an example of where how the language should be different. I tried looking up to see if there's any cases on this type of situation. There was a case that the state Supreme Court decided in '89 where they refused to allow an insurance agency in Bath, in a zone that only had professional offices was the only category. Their ordinance was different than ours, much more restrictive. Professional offices was defined as an offices of a doctor, a lawyer, architect, engineer, accountant, optometrist, psychologist, or similar practitioner. So it didn't have the including but not limited to type language. It didn't have references to the potential sale of items. It didn't have references to the specialized training or professional certification. It basically just said one of those categories or similar practitioner, and the court said a insurance agency does not fit into those. So that I could contrast that with Lyman's. I think Lyman's is looser. My overall gut and look at it suggests it probably was not what people were thinking when they passed the ordinance talking about professional offices, but it could be construed to include something that does not fit your typical accountant, attorney, those type of situations. The only other thing I guess I'll point out, and I think the board should take into consideration, there are other definitions out there that might fit into some of these categories. Agriculture 2 talks about the business of producing and raising plants and crops, including gardening as a commercial operation, with or without the use of a greenhouse. So if it's some sort of commercial growing operation inside, marijuana is clearly excluded out of there. That could fall into there. And then there's also commercial or industrial facilities. And there they have two categories: a facility having less than 2,500 square feet of floor space for the assembling, fabricating, finishing, beverage container redemption, packaging, or processing of goods, or providing a service to the general public, and having 6 or less employees, including the owners, with limited retail sales allowed. Then there's a similar category, commercial, industrial 2, which is a little bit larger. So I don't know exactly what's going on over there, and I'm sure they're going to talk about it. But the problem they might have is that it's pretty easy to migrate from something relatively small to something that clearly fits into this category, which is not allowed in the residential zone, which is my understanding is there's very little allowed there. The professional offices was allowed, but
So,
commercial, industrial facilities not allowed. The agriculture 2 is not allowed. I was trying to look at what other categories might include this. I really didn't find any others. I didn't find anything specifically to artisans. The board, you're the board, you're the triers of fact. So you're ultimately going to be interpreting the town's own ordinance. And my understanding from Attorney Smith was that when the owners applied for this site plan review, they made it clear that they were going to be putting sort of artist studios and things in here. So it seems to me like you probably understood that was going to be in there, and it was your conclusion that it fell within the professional offices category. So if you do vote today that the notice of decision should be amended to make it clear that artisans or artist studios are allowed in there within the professional offices. I guess they need to know that it's treading the line, and there could be, it could migrate into one of these things that are just not allowed. Frankly, I think probably maybe the ordinance needs to be rewritten,
Well,
or maybe they need to go out, I mean, probably benefit them to get it clarified, maybe through either a contract zone process or something, because there's probably going to be people who want to go in there that want to do these activities that are going to go beyond this sort of artist studio thing. It's really hard on Brenda as well, I would think, to try to, how's she going to be able to determine what goes in there? A difference between an artist studio or a crafter. I think there was like maker or something like that.
Yeah,
Was one of the considerations. How does that get different from someone who's assembling, fabricating, finishing a product or service for profit? I don't know that there's a huge difference. I mean, I'm certainly artists and craftsmen, sometimes they can kind of exist in both worlds.
I just had,
Yeah.
okay. First, I got a couple of questions. Don Hernan, we had this notice of decision it says revised September 20th, 23. Was that ever signed or not? We didn't sign. Okay, so this was the proposed change, right? And I guess the situation is that maybe, I mean, not that this ever happens, but it may be the planning board screwed up in a sense when we approved this. But I do remember when the applicants came here to apply for the, go through the site plan review process, et cetera, we did talk about using those individual offices, if you want to call them that, or cubby holes or sections or whatever, for this type of activity. I think the applicant was upfront on that.
That's what Attorney Smith told me.
But, so, what right now, and maybe we made a mistake in the sense that we shouldn't have used the professional offices category for approval. That seemed to be at the time, as I remember it, maybe other guys have better memories than I, which is highly possible. But it seemed like the only category that it would fit under. And so we went forth in good faith, and I think the applicants went forth in good faith to try to go ahead and remodel that place and spend a lot of money on it. I mean, and we had some issues about the fire protection. I think that's all been resolved. I believe that's all been resolved, the sprinkler system and all that business. So we went through the process a little bit. So my question is this. We do have those four weasel words, which I really hate, but not limited to, in the professional offices area. So it seems to me we got two options. Either we use the but not limited to stuff this thing into categories that are acceptable to the applicant and the planning board can live with and Brenda can live with. Or the other choice is just contract zoning, which still has those four weasel words in there, which says, but not limited to. However, that's a little more stable ground because contract zoning allows you to put a use in that's allowed in another zone. Now, the question I would have is this use allowed in another zone? If it's allowed in general purpose, then by a contract zone, it could be allowed in residential, which is, this property is in residential. So, I mean, so that's a possibility. And then my thinking along that line, if we went contract zoning, would we have to go back and have another public hearing and go through the whole process, or how, so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm rolling down.
Yeah, I mean, that
How can we-
contract zoning requires municipal officers, has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. One thing about contract zoning is also supposed to be applied to properties that are unique. And clearly this would,
Well,
I think this thing would it's kind of its own thing, this building.
well, remember, there's another issue because that same property was turned down for a contract by most of the same people on the planning board when a different applicant proposed doing a rather high density number of condos, as I
Mhm.
remember it there. And they were higher density than even the mobile home districts.
And I don't know what the basis of why it was turned down was, what ground, but
There was
Yeah.
anyhow, but I'm just saying in the past, there was not, and past doesn't set a precedent. I mean, one project does not set a precedent for the next project necessarily. But I'm just saying that contract zoning request was turned down for that property because of the type of application the applicant was, and plus there was very strong opposition from abutters and other people about it. But it was primarily, I think, because of the density of the proposed condos there. I mean, and anyhow, so I'm just saying, I think, I mean, if the planning board made a mistake, then we should try to fix it. But on the other hand, we got an applicant over here who spent considerable money, I assume.
Mhm.
It looks that way. He's just going by there, there's a lot of work going on. So how can we make this work but also give Brenda a situation where she can look at proposed uses and see whether that is allowable per the notice of decision. So in other words, what's the fine line here?
well, and that's why I mentioned that I think this is going to, regardless of what you do today, even if you say, yeah, fine, it seems like you're going to have this issue come up again because of, because it sounds like there's many potential uses that might go in there, right? And each one,
You need to open that.
Yeah, we need to have the door open. for public.
Sorry, I'm deaf in one ear.
Oh,
It's hard to
I'm
hear.
I'm sorry, just that,
It's a public meeting, so.
yeah, it's,
Sorry.
we've had this issue before, unfortunately. It's the acoustics.
so what I was saying is that you might, unless you can kind of, and I don't know what kind of language you might suggest in there. If you got like artist studios or something, it might be like low intensity. Whatever. If there's any sort of, what am I trying to say?
Personal service.
To keep it from being considered like a commercial industrial type of use that goes in there. I mean, if someone goes in there and opens up a woodworking shop selling furniture, I don't know. I think that fits in the commercial industrial thing, and that's not allowed in that
Yeah, I think that's,
zone.
for me personally, that's my biggest concern is usage creep.
Well,
We go from artisans, and I'm just gonna say a pottery maker, to all of a sudden now we're having, because you got someone doing smelting out there and doing heavy metal castings.
Yeah.
So we're creeping from one thing to the other. I got no problem with pottery or wood carvers or doing her plants.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned that later on down the road, what was brought to our attention is residents were concerned because the owner had his personal boat, as we're allowed to believe. They were concerned that it was now becoming a boating facility.
well,
That's a fine line if he has his personal.
okay.
Now, what if he decides to help a friend and do his friend's boat?
Well,
Now we're looking at creeping in.
I mean, it's just, I think that if you're going to say that includes, artist studios, those type of things, I think it should be, I mean, you did have something that's revised, this revised notice decision.
Yeah.
That talked about, actually, can I have that 1 second?
Yeah,
There was something I saw, to be understood as individual students or artists, craftsmen, or makers.
yeah.
You had something there, like anything above this, you have to, go out.
Yeah, anything that wasn't clearly defined as an artist, studio, craftsman, or maker would have to come back.
Yeah, you get that in there. I mean, that provides something.
I thought that, I agree with Don, that the best category that we can think of at the time when the original application was professional office.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's not all that precise. But as you allude to, we tried to modify the language of the notice of the decision to describe professional offices to be understood as individual studios for artists, craftsmen, and makers. And as Rod, you were mentioning that for anything that may be beyond that, the granted loose definition would have to come back to the board. The one issue that came up that, to my recollection, was the possibility of the production of consumables. baked goods, anything, something like that, which is prohibited outright, I believe, in this particular zone.
Artisanal food and beverage, right? Is there one of those categories?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's,
You're right.
It's prohibited.
I think it was prohibited.
It's prohibited.
And if that was the case, you have a functioning kitchen there, I believe commercial kitchen in terms of quality.
Ripped
out.
It was, okay. Well, that negates that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the safety net, we were being broad, we've always maintained the same line of thinking the whole way, but the safety we were thinking was that if we had something that fell out of that category, even within it, they have to come in and,
Still gotta get a permit
so if you have a permit for any,
from the code enforcement officer for that
Build-outs.
space, so.
for the spaces to be changed. I mean, our vision is, and our leases are leading us to think that it's coming. It's just artists who are gonna show up and make art, have a place to. We have a gentleman who has a bunch of stringed instruments and he needs to maintain them in a controlled space. He's not even gonna be playing, he rents them. It's a space where he can like kind of have his little office and keep in an air conditioned space his what do you call it, instruments, thank you. So, I mean, we have a person who's a commercial, what's it called, upholsterer. She wants to do sales and oak covers and she's, shoemaker. She works by herself with a sewing machine, couches, chairs. I've got like a million things for her to do already, as soon as we can get her in there.
And
So
on number
makeup.
4, in the approvals, I think we made a mistake, and I think every time you rent it out, it should come back for the electrical inspector to check it.
Only if there's changes though, right?
Well, that's the mistake we made. It says if doesn't apply to those purposes, but everything that goes in there is gonna take a different amount of electricity.
Well, not really. I mean, I think we're setting it up right now to be pretty, like, it's pretty nice.
I'll ask the electrical inspector what he thinks.
So, one of the problems you run into is like calling it art studios or something like that. And I'm gonna throw this out there. I told Caleb this example, about, I do electrical inspections also for the city of Bolton.
Right.
And, there was baseball, on Warren Avenue. They train people how to play baseball and stuff like that. They're, used to right by the dome, baseball, teaching, all kinds of baseball aspects, everything else. Well, all of a sudden, they decided that they're gonna make bats. Great. So they cordoned off a room. They didn't need any permits or anything, but they're just not structural, nothing. And they brought in the lathe and they started running out that. Well, now you just created a class 1 Div 2 area, which is explosive fibers. It was not wired that way, the original. Now, they thought just doing this was no big deal,
Yeah.
let alone where they were painting the bats in all lacquer, and now you class 1 Div 1 area, which again is explosive. And it was not wired that way at all. But, wait a minute, this has to do with baseball, this was allowed. I don't, and I think I explained to Caleb, I personally, from the electrical standpoint, I don't care if you turn it into a 20-story building and raise farm animals, so long as it's wired appropriately for the use. And every time you have a change of somebody coming in, there's a possibility of a change in use and a change in you offer electricity. Right now, I've asked for a load calculation for the building, you get to get that, because of the discrepancy between the 200 amp service that's there, the 400 amp service that the tenant wants to put in, and the 600 amp service that the electrician wants to put in. So I said, well, I want a load calculation. We're not just picking numbers arbitrarily out of the head. Now, I spoke to the guys that are bringing the heat pumps, and he's already telling me I've got over a 200 amp load in just my heat pumps.
Oh, for that building?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So that's why you start increasing loads. That's why it's kind of important. And when the city of Saco, I've been there for 25 years, you change the tenant space, yeah, code office signs off on it. We know what's going in there because of those very reasons.
If I could address the board?
Just state your name
Yeah.
first, please.
My name is Gordy Smith. I represent
Gordon Smith?
Gordon Smith, that's
Thank you.
correct, yeah. I'm an attorney at Verrill in
Right.
Portland. I represent Shannon and Caleb. And so I just wanted to, there's a couple of things I think that we're maybe getting ahead of. The electrical compliance with code is a given. Every building, structure, facility, whatever the use, has to comply with electrical code, plumbing code. If you have, there's, as Brad said, there's commercial and industrial uses that are allowed, just as that. No greater definition than commercial or industrial use. You're off to the races in terms of what the planning board, the planning board can give you a permit to put in a commercial or industrial use where that's allowed in that district. It's not allowed in this district. We're in residential for this
Yeah,
property.
that's the
But
problem.
let's just say you are in, the commercial district. That use doesn't come back before the planning board every time there might be a new tenant or a new, it has to comply with electrical code every time, there might be a change in going from one type of, if you put a lathe in that creates a different code compliance issue, then absolutely. That you need to come back to the CEO to get a building permit anytime you're doing any structural change that's going to require approval. But in terms of the planning board and its approval of uses, that's a one-time deal. Typically, that's how the board, will do things. So I think that, and then let me also go back and say, in 2022, when Caleb and Shannon came before the board, they said, as that they were upfront with, here's what we're proposing to do here. Artists, makers, craftsmen, woodworkers, painters, and the board, approved that as professional offices. And as you guys have noted, they've gone out and they've gotten commercial loans in excess of $1 million. They've signed contracts in excess of $500,000 that they're on the hook for to pay contractors going out there. They've already spent actual cash out of pocket, probably over $100,000. And in reliance on that permit that was issued in 2022. So from a legal standpoint, I'm not sure the town can even go back and say, no, you can't do that. We don't want to go there. That's not where we want to go. We want to work with the town to say, let's make everyone comfortable going forward. And if that means putting some different language in, if that means possibly going for a contract zone, maybe maybe we're open to being flexible. But as a practical matter, there are workers out there right now. And so we need to have some certainty that this approval is, first of all, that the 2002 approval is still valid. If the board wants to issue a new approval with the conditions, with the proposed conditions that were circulated, we're okay with that. That's fine. If you want to sign off on that.
Just one point. The applicant is, don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming the applicant, but the applicant is not complying with all of the conditions in the previously issued 2022 notice of decision, specifically with respect to the sprinkler system. It's one item I remember. I'm not sure if I have the other part in there.
Okay, let's talk about that.
But no, I don't see I have to talk about it. I'm just saying, but we try to work with the applicant on that because of the changes that they brought to our attention, which would lead us to issue, my point is that would lead us to issue a modification of that notice of decision, because notice of decision there said something about blah, 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 existing sprinkler system or using that. So we had to revise the
Applicant shall ensure the fire protection system meets current codes, is tested, that the water supply system is adequate, and provide documentation of operability to the CEO.
Whichever one that was. I don't have the old one here, I don't think.
Yeah, that's from 2022.
2022. Yeah,
So-
so I'm saying we had to revise that.
Oh, highlighted thing.
Yeah, that was a revision. That was standard 14. So I'm saying is that there was a reason to revise this
Okay, yeah.
for that purpose. Because it wasn't practical for the applicant to meet that, I guess, because of the previous or the existing sprinkler system was
Antiquated.
probably built a long time ago and wasn't operable.
And so these
So-
guys got the state fire marshal to sign off on it.
So we had to revise this thing anyway, but that brought up the issue of whether the application was correct. for professional offices. I mean, it's just, that's what sort of brought this up, I think, as I remember it. Maybe my memory's incorrect, but, so we're just trying to figure a way to, I mean, personally, I'm trying to figure a way to make this right if we can. But also, I think the code enforcement officer has to have an ability to say, okay, this notice of decision allows this use. And then if the applicant wants to do something else, then that's not allowed. So we have to be more specific than we were under just professional offices. That's
There's no
so.
definition of what artisans, artist studios.
Exactly.
I know.
There's no definition for it, so it makes it a little hard.
Right. So is there any way to, my thought was, there's any way to better define the uses such that it would enable to the code enforcement officer to go and say, okay, here's a use, and that's what the notice of decision says, so that we don't end up with this coming back to the planning board asking for another use unless it's something that's totally different from that. I mean, so that's where I'm coming from. Anyway, I'll take off.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I think a good example of what we're talking about this evening, what I would like is direction from the board. There's going to be 10 units out there, maybe 12. It's a lot of uses. I want to know that I'm approving a certificate of occupancy that's based on the decisions that you've made. And I think a good example of that is craft beer. That's a craft, it's a maker. I think it falls under that category very nicely.
Except,
Not allowed in this district. You have 2 different facilities that do that. One within a mile, one within a couple of miles. They went through the process of going to the selectmen and getting approval for contract zoning. So what happens if there's 10 different uses that aren't allowed in that district? Are you looking for 10 different contract zoning? Or is there a way to do one umbrella that's going to cover this so that we're not back here?
Yeah, we don't want to do
Every
that.
time somebody moves in. I don't want that, you don't want that, they don't want that.
Well, what if a contract zone, let's just speak hypothetically, just said commercial use was allowed?
Maybe commercial, I mean, can you write a contract zone like, I think a contract zone could be anything you can write on a contract, right?
You could do commercial 1, which is a smaller,
So if that, if.
It just has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's the only
Exactly.
limitation.
And that's what I'm looking for, is a very good definition and direction from you, so that I can do a CO for them in a timely manner. They have people coming in, they need to start their business. They don't need to go through this every time.
We don't want that.
And we really don't want them to.
No, you don't.
Yep, just a couple quick questions to answer in my mind. Is a professional golfer fit in a professional office space? How about a professional baseball manager needs to have his office there? Is that allowed? It's not written, but is that allowed? Who's defining what professional office is?
Well,
It's not very clear.
So that's, I mean, what you're bringing up is that there's discretion and interpretation in any ordinance, not just yours. And so if, what constitutes, there's always going to be that discretion. And so this is a use, these are uses that the board hasn't seen and the town hasn't seen. So there's maybe some lack of comfort with it. But I think that a lot of this might be speculative concern where Brenda's saying, well, what if it's this or what if it's that? If it's craft beer, it's not allowed. If it's not an allowed use in the zone, it's just not allowed. And so, we agree that, we want to have things spelled out so that everyone can just proceed without having to keep coming in front of the planning board.
So you change it and call it office space instead of professional office space?
we need to have a terminology that fits, that is accepted in our ordinance. That's because I always say we are inclusive versus an exclusive. Unless it's in here, it's not allowed. So we have to, that's how we came up with professional office space.
I have an observation too. Each use that goes in there could bring other factors in. Is the use going to have customers? Is it going to increase traffic? Because none of that, we have not approved any of that because there's no traffic. These are going to be workspaces. If any of the uses requires cooking, now we have kitchen, they need to have appliances that.
I think we allowed them to have events, so many events a year.
Yeah,
We
Which is gonna increase traffic.
That's right, that's right.
So,
and there's to be minimal out-the-door retail,
Well, that's all right.
because this is their
Minimal,
workspace, this is
but it
not their
wasn't
galleries.
excluded. It wasn't excluded.
I get concerned about some of the potential clients that go in. Now, artists and craftsmen and makers, they would love to have a dear friend of mine who's a woodcarver.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I also got another dear friend who is an expert blacksmith. We don't want him having his forge there, running his hammer.
I
The whole
think,
ground would be shaking.
well, Ron, I think we're getting conjecture here. I think we ought to just stick to what we have written.
We need to fix this.
Yeah, and fix
Yeah.
this thing, because many things could come up in the future, but we got to get some wording that we can put in this notice of decision that allows Brenda to issue her occupancy permits and is sufficiently broad that we don't have to have the applicant coming back to the planning board every time they change a use. So, I mean, is there some way we can get this thing to where, I mean, if it has to go contract, I guess that would be a possibility, but I hate to say this because I hate this, but there's 4 words in there under professional offices, but not limited to. So if we could somehow, instead, maybe not using these words, artists, craftsmen, and makers, maybe we could just come up with a list of things that were authorized, bing, 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 and then run that up the flagpole and keep it under professional offices, because that category, which is not, maybe isn't the best, is the only one that I see in that is allowed that we could work with here, because it does have those 4 weasel words, which again, I don't like, and I'm trying to get rid of in another part of this ordinance with not any success, but that's another issue.
I personally don't want to have a list of items that we restrict them to.
Well,
John, if I may, I'm very skeptical about the possibility if you go with their contract zoning, they can come up with precise language that would cover anything that would fall under the category of an artist using a studio.
you mean the same issue would be there?
Yeah.
Be the same problem.
So I think as best as we can, adjust the language that we are working with right now.
Yeah,
And again,
right.
it will be imprecise. I don't think dropping artist, craftsman, or makers is the way to go. Go with that, but with the understanding that with, as we have it here under condition 4, any new use that may not fall into the category easily there, we come back to the board for review. And any use in any of those studios that they must comply with the electrical code strictures there. And that'd be a matter of you going out there and checking to see if it does cover the requirements. Again, creep, imprecision in terms of what other activities may be there. I think that's just a given we have to work with.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the issue with coming back for the planning board for use by use determinations, I mean, I don't think planning board, that's not really feasible. It's if you're trying to get a tenant and that tenant, and let's say Brenda looks at the tenant, she's like, I'm not sure. It could go either way. I'm going to bring it to the planning board. We're talking about a couple months. You can't enter into contracts that way.
I think you missed the important part of what he said. That doesn't fit into this category.
Right. So,
It's gotta be way.
but what I'm hearing Brenda say is she doesn't know it fits into the category.
What I worry about, and I agree, let's be just as general as we can so that we're not, that's not a revolving door.
Mhm.
But I do not think that if it specifically says here that it's not allowed in the district, that does not fall into your four weasel words. So,
Yeah. True.
the
There is an effort.
artisan food and
That's true.
beverage says no, it's
Right.
not
Right.
allowed in the residential. So if you say we're gonna figure out a way to allow that, you're circumventing
Oh,
the
no.
contract owner.
No, it's, that absolutely
That's
not
true.
the
We
intent.
already have, I believe the boat restoration already isn't allowed in that district. Now, I guess, is it an art?
Well,
Yes.
Is it a professional service?
Can I just address the boat thing?
Sure.
I mean, this is their personal boat. They just brought their boat to their property. I mean, there are people that store their boats in their residential districts at their house
But they're
over the
looking for
winter.
a CO. They're looking for
Right,
a
but
CO.
every time someone who owns a home, who has a boat, and they store it at their house in the winter, they don't need to get a new CO.
That's different than a professional building. We're talking about a professional building looking for a CO for use that isn't allowed in the district. And I don't feel like I have the authority to do that.
Was the use for boat restoration?
No, no one came to say we want to operate a boat restoration facility.
no, we're not.
There wasn't we need a certificate of occupancy for a boat restoration facility. These guys brought their personal boat to their property to work on it.
Then why am I getting calls for a CO out there if there's no use there?
It's a studio, it's a shop. It's what you guys approved in 2022. As Gordy said, go anywhere in Lyman, Portland, anywhere, you'll see all sorts of business owners parking their boat on their property, pulling their boat like that, or putting their art, like this happens all the time. I'm not going to get a CO for a boat restoration, shop, because that's not what it is. It's our studio. It's our studio. I happen to pull a boat into it to work on it.
And how do I write a CO for a studio, not knowing what the use is? We're right back.
Studio. The studio is, the studio.
Hold on. So let's just try and keep focused. I don't want to get into this back and forth, if that's okay with the board.
Yes.
So what we're hearing is Brenda's saying we need more. She's not comfortable with artists, craftsmen, and makers. Is that right?
If it's a use, if it specifically says, if it doesn't specifically say you can't do it here, then I agree, it probably falls into your four weasel words.
Mhm.
But if it says, no, it's not allowed there, I don't believe this board.
I think you got a point.
Allow it
She's got a
without going through contact.
Yeah, we're in 100% agreement on that.
I'm hearing that you're not going to be making beer, not going to have bakery, that kind of stuff, all those consumables, that's just off the table, that don't happen.
Just no food and beverage.
Marcel?
My concern came up with the word artist. Okay, I have a friend who's an electrician, does pyrotechnics. He considers that an art. I'm just saying, you can put all kinds of words by saying.
Take
And
the
that's
word
why
artist
when I-
out.
when I first, that's why in software, and I'm just using software as an example, 25 years. Yeah, if you're gonna change tenant space, you're gonna release to another person, yeah, it's gonna go through the code office for sign off.
Look,
Make sure that it makes sense.
if someone's, operating a fireworks manufacturing facility, then you're in a whole other category. You're under state regulation, and you can't do that.
No, he wasn't making
Yeah.
he was designing them.
It has nothing to do with us, I'm sorry. We're not making fireworks.
No.
Caleb.
My point is the definition of artist. That's why I propose, and once again, you lease it, person say, great, they move out, great. What's going in? That's all. What's going in? That's it. Sign off. Done. 'Cause that's the only way I can see, so that if you're gonna allow
Only,
for a wide range of things, and I'm fine with what I don't care less what you're allowing there. My concern is, okay, if what you're putting in there, and you talk about painters, okay, are they flammable or whatever? That's, the fire department's gonna be curious about that, which is why, again, we have to sign it, just check.
can I just add, I'm not sure who you are, or like what capacity you're speaking in.
Electrical.
I'm the electrical inspector with the town of Lyman.
Okay. And so this is
I'm
your,
also the electrical inspector with the city of Saco and with the city of Portland. So I,
so you're talking from the electrical
from the electrical standpoint.
standpoint? Okay. So we're saying, yeah, absolutely. Whatever use it is, and it has to fit within the, you know, artist, craftsman, or maker. It's got to comply with the electrical code. And they have to, if they have to affirmatively come, and just like any other manufacturing facility or commercial use, if they're changing around their electrical equipment, they come to you.
Right.
Yes.
And so that was my concern. My concern is that, you know, you rent it out to a bunch of different people, they bring in a bunch of different things, you call them artists. Well, hey, I'm an artist, so this space is an artist one. That's where my concern came in.
What if we came up, and this is gonna kind of go ruffle Dawn's feathers, but studio for artists,
Not the first
craftsmen,
time.
and makers of the generally accepted trades. So that you don't have the firework maker come up, you don't have the whatever, but it would open the door for the painters, the sculptors, the craftsmen, the people that are growing bonsai trees. You know, that's an art.
Yeah.
You know, but if so, I'm trying to think of some wild
Hmm.
skill pyrotechnic comes up.
This is, again, speculation about something that may come in. And if something comes in and it's wildly inappropriate, then Brenda can say, you know what, I don't think that fits the definition.
No.
And you're engaged in a use that is not allowed under your permit.
That's why the addition of something saying of the generally accepted trade or skill sets.
You could also say, including items for display, collection, or small scale sales or something like that. You know, I mean, I think that kind of, those type of things cover what people are sort of anticipating. You know, I mean, you also do have some other uses that are allowed in the zone, that business contractor, you know, someone, looks like that's allowed in site plan review. So I mean, there are some uses that were not mentioned in your approval that they might be able to do in the future. They have to put that
And I
in.
just thought of a wild artisan crafts. If you're a model plane maker, you're a maker, you're a craftsman, you're a skilled artisan. All of a sudden, we find up and test flighting model jets in the back parking lot.
Mr. Smith, you have something you want to say?
This is all speculation.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, but we have to think so that it doesn't come back and bite us.
And obviously Caleb and Shannon want to have flexibility,
Yeah.
to have different kinds of people in there. And you know what? They might have a blacksmith in there. That's a kind of craft. You know, metalwork is a craft. You know, they might have, you know, they'll have woodworkers or people that are using tools that create noise. That's part of, I think that those are crafts, you know? And so this is a big property. It's a big facility. It's set back from the road. You know, it's perfectly suited for this kind of thing. It's not going to be right in anyone's backyard or right on the road or in anyone's face. That's the whole beauty of it. And so it seems like all of these things that are concerns, none of them have happened, and we're not proposing to do any of that.
Brenda?
This is going to be the last thing, but I would like to ask maybe the two attorneys and the board, do you think I should write a CO for a studio? Not knowing what the usage is,
No.
so because I don't know what the usage is, I don't know that it's fit out.
See, this is a two-part issue here, because for him to rent the studio out, he's gonna need a CO, but if I went there and said, Caleb, can I rent the studio? And he's like, yeah, well, we gotta get an occupancy permit. I would be kind of leery of renting it, not knowing if,
Well, even the state fire marshal requires that every tenant get a permit for fitting out their unit. So that's not unusual.
If they're going to make changes that trigger fire
Right.
code.
That means they have to know the use. So I need to know the use to give a CO for a studio. In my world, what does a studio mean? And what does that
An
mean?
open space is a studio.
Exactly. So what's the use in a studio?
I think ultimately it's gonna be little things, which sounds silly, but I mean,
Sure.
that's what they approved, you know. I think,
Except for I have every intention of making a large scale
Me too.
sculpture as soon as I pull out the boat.
I have
Which
a-
is what we told you guys we're gonna do in twenty
I have a
twenty-two.
bachelor's in
And
fine
it's
arts.
probably gonna be
sculpture.
metal. And she
Definitely.
has a professional
Yes.
degree in arts. I mean, on and on and on.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
I mean, I think that ultimately, if this is supposed to be a bigger facility for other stuff, it would be great if it was just approved as commercial industrial, that covers everything.
Yeah, but we can't do that.
Do it, you know, unless.
It's not, let's go contract.
Unless eventually they seek a contract. zone.
So just hypothetical, well, you guys are into the hypotheticals. Let's just say that they rent all 10 of these studio spaces are rented out to metal workers. They have welding rigs, they have, chop saws, they have, they're using a ton of electricity. But those are crafts. Okay. That's probably like the most intense kind of scenario you could get into. Let's say all 10 of these spaces were rented out to metal workers. Is that, I mean, that seems within the scope of what the planning board has approved. And so there would probably going to be some of those, some, woodworkers, painters, maybe it could be a dance studio. I don't know. That's an art too. So it's whoever wants to be there. I think all of this is just speculation about an unknown. And if those things happen, if there are uses in there that are not complying with the electrical code or are too intense are not allowed in that district or are too intense, then Brenda, obviously you're gonna hear about it. You're gonna come by and you're gonna say, look, we have to talk about this. But let's wait till we get there because I don't think that's gonna happen.
If you get a metal fabrication business in there, that's gonna be smack in that commercial industrial facility, and it's prohibited. So, I mean, that's why it's a tough thing what you guys are trying to do. I understand why, because it's already been approved. But, I mean, if you read that definition of commercial industrial facilities, if they're refining goods for the, fabricating, finishing, packaging, processing goods for the general public, it's gonna fall under that. So,
Marcel, in Saco on the old railroad tracks, the old mill building that was converted into artisan studios. How did Saco handle that? Because they were supposed to allow, basically, you'd have your living space, and then there was your attached production studio.
Yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about? I know a lot of it kind of went basically to residential.
It did, a lot of it went to residential. But prior to that, this tenant fit out space
Yeah.
would have to meet whatever the current codes would be.
Yeah.
Now, if you sold it, okay, or you had somebody else take the space.
Yep.
They would have to come for a sign off with the code office
For their activity in.
for the new activity. 9 times out of 10, to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it was a simple initial, done.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
because that's the closest I can think of.
Yeah, okay, that's simple initial, good day, have a good day, be on your way, good luck. But there were times, and that people came in and said, okay, listen, well, we're gonna do, welding, some final settling stuff.
Yeah.
Our department has, well, where are you storing your acetylene tanks, where are you storing your oxygen tanks, I've got other tenants in this building, so that's what great, and even some of those were like, okay, you're below the minimum specs, you don't have enough in this building to do that, to warrant it, great, signed up, but we were notified. It was a
Is there any
simple
way that you
sign-off.
could go back to finding the criteria that was used, so maybe we can plagiarize it a little bit to give Brenda some guidance?
I can do that.
Not if it's not in our ordinance.
To see how it goes about, because that's the only one I can think of right off the top of my head. I mean, I don't want these guys to lose out, but we also have to follow the ordinance.
Well, yeah.
That's the biggest
Follow
thing.
From my standpoint, quite frankly, I think it's a great space for them, I think it's a great idea, I think it's beautiful, I think it's wonderful, okay? I just don't want the town to be on the hook for artisans, and then you start calling anything, you call almost anything an artisan.
Mhm.
And that's where the problem comes in.
Could there be a notification requirement, notification, not review and approval, but notification requirement for all uses, once you have, rented a studio?
That would be fine. The notification of, a tenant's name and
Proposed use.
their business or what they're proposing to do? To the,
I'm good with that.
not to Brenda.
I don't know why we're mixing code
Yeah.
enforcement of NFPA, of, IBC with land use.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused about that. Like, we're talking about two different issues. Of course, our building will meet all applicable codes, which is NFPA and IBC. Of course, absolutely, 100%. We're talking about land use. That's what we're talking about here.
No,
Why are
that's,
we
that's,
mixing the two?
yeah, I said that before. Yeah, so the board is deciding, but the board isn't really even deciding that because the board approved this in August of 2022. And these guys have gone out and committed hundreds of thousands of dollars to redevelop a building that has been sitting out unused for a decade. So really, this is, we're coming here because we were trying to be helpful and accommodating. There's the town cannot, is stopped at this point from saying you can't, use what you proposed to do in your 2022 application, which was artist studios. And now, what does that mean? That's point of interpretation. This is part of what, this is an interpretive issue that comes up. So let me just hopefully can I just propose something so in order to try and move something forward, we have, I don't know who drafted the revised findings, but we have this revised finding that is in front of the board. We're okay with the revised findings. I would suggest that the board, if it wants to, it can approve the revised findings and then understand that, there's, as far as I know, there's no members of the public that are here that are saying, we don't want this facility here. Permit the facility, let it go forward. And just say, look, if Brenda gets out there and she says, this is a problem, we have people that are doing things that they shouldn't be doing there, then we'll deal with that as an enforcement issue. But in front of the board, the project has met all of the requirements it needs to satisfy the ordinance. These guys are happy to go through a contract zoning process. In addition to that, not that they're stopping here, but if it seems like that might be good for them, then maybe and the town, to have that property subject to some more lenient rules or different rules. It's a different kind of use. It's not really a residential property at all. So in order to use it properly, maybe it should be subject to some different zoning rules. Maybe they would want to pursue a contract zone, but that is a looking forward thing. So that's what I would suggest that the board could vote on tonight.
Well, that still doesn't answer your question. That's the issue there that I see.
I think Mr. Smith is right. Like let's say the barn door's already shut, so you've already approved it for what they
Right.
were doing. So, artists, craftsmen, those are what you contemplate out there. I do think it would benefit them if they did something to try to loosen it up, either lobbied the town to change, create some new categories in the ordinance, or maybe sometime when you're looking at ordinance review, maybe look at that, or if they want to do a contract zone, because then it's going to make it a lot easier on her and a lot easier in town. The town's already got some issues here. Someone could try to, challenge this decision, but it seems like that was already made a while ago and the stuff's already in there and there's not that much we can do about it now. But I do think it would be beneficial if, like what I was mentioning about metal fabrication, I'm thinking like people make tire chain, like all these things when they talk about that, that type of stuff might go well in there, but it's not going to pass a straight face test when we start looking at these, at the wording of the ordinance. So if they ever want to do all that stuff, I think it should probably be pursued.
Yeah, agreed. And I think this goes exactly into what Brenda was saying about, well, there are uses that are not allowed in the residential district. If it falls into any of those, like commercial industrial fabrication, then no, that's not allowed. And we're not proposing to do that. And I would also just say, we also, in making that decision, we also wanted to have some certainty that, if these guys come to Brenda for a certificate of occupancy for an artist studio or a crafts person studio or a maker studio, then that COO is going to get issued without further kind of, need to come back and do individual analysis.
So because we decided that all three of those are very wide categories, I need to know the specific use of the artist studio. Is that an oil painter? Or, Caleb told us, I think in the very first meeting, that renovating a boat is an art. So, I mean, you can't just say that I'll give a CO for an artist studio. I can't.
Well, okay.
I'll give a CO for a specific use.
Well, so this is a commercial project that is developing 10 spaces at the same time. And they're not individual tenants. So we don't know, we don't have the tenants until we have a CO. So we can't say, oh, this particular business is going to go into this studio and this, so this is going to be an oil painter. This is going to be a woodworker. We can't do that because we don't have the tenants until the CO is issued and the work is done. So,
Just, she gets notified at some point, just so she can make sure.
But even the fire marshal said that every tenant needs to take out a building permit to refit their area.
I don't think I've seen that. Is that?
And we don't have a problem with that. Now let's consider if we are not going to refit the area because the electrical, yes, it will follow NFPA and it will follow all IBC permitting, 100%.
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about that. That's true. So if there is no need to change it,
Absolutely.
then I'm not going to.
I mean,
Yeah, and I would propose to you that probably most of the time, the electrical that we are putting in this, the electrical mechanical systems we're putting in right now, because you've given the permit, that every studio has a slop sink in it. Okay, so a slop sink, plenty of light overhead, most artists, makers, craftsmen, including ourselves, are all set. And when I don't believe it's reasonable of the town, I believe the town should tell I'm a member of this town, and we don't have $100,000 in this, we have $1.1 million already taken out as a loan, we're paying interest on, to be clear. I think the town should say to its CEO, issue a permit for the studio, because you guys told us we could do studios. It is a studio that right now we are using to renovate our personal boat. Probably 6 months from now, we are going to do a sculpture. 3 months later, I drive by the tin complex here. Are you guys, every time that they move a picnic table in and out of a garage, are you questioning? Wait a minute, they didn't tell us they were putting a picnic table in there. That's an assembly. Let's call them to the planning board. I mean, come on, it's a
And
studio.
the only thing I would say is, don't blame her, she didn't create this issue.
No.
There is, if we could go back and redo all this again, I think there'd be a lot more scrutiny right now on this professional office, given what we're talking
Okay,
about.
but that ship
So-
sailed.
And she's gonna do what she needs to do. And if they decide, if the board, amends this decision today, what we're talking about, she's not gonna deny permits that fall within what the board has approved, so.
Well,
she's
okay.
gonna follow that.
I guess I'm getting back to the same thing. We had proposed to use the words to be understood as individual studios for artists, craftsmen, and makers, okay? My feeling, and this has to go under, in my opinion, has to go under professional offices, because I don't see anything else in the zoning ordinance that we can hang our hats on here, because and some things that are restricted, fine, they can't do them, but I don't see why we can't expand, either as an attachment, expand the definitions of what artists, craftsmen, and makers are. In other words, can we come up with a list that's artists, including blah, 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 and list 10 lists, craftsmen, list this. This way, if they come in and they want to do that, Brendan says, okay, it's on that list, check it off, it's okay. And go that route, as opposed to being, because these words, artists, craftsmen, and makers, are not specific enough to be able to, someone who's writing a permit to be able to hang their hat on. I don't think. Maybe that's the issue.
I
Maybe
think
not.
what we
might
get
be
into-
Too hard to do that. I mean, she just
Yes.
described a musician or something like that. I mean, they're not, they're not really making anything, so I mean,
Artist though.
yeah, but it's an artist, so
Right.
I don't know, Don, I think we might be
Something.
going down a route.
You go down that route
Yeah.
and try to put that list together, you probably would be inserting the words, but not limited
Oh,
to.
God.
Right, well,
Yeah.
You-
Shoot me
this-
now.
you know,
What
so-
This is also totally unlike anything that the town does anywhere else, what is being discussed right now. If you have there are general uses that are permitted.
Yeah.
In general, like, so there's residential use. That can mean a lot of different things. You have different types of families, different types of houses. You have commercial use, you have industrial use. When those get signed off on, they don't, every time there's a new tenant or, a change from one kind of factory to another kind of factory, they don't come back here. They don't, that's not the issue. Either they fit within the approved use or they don't. And
Yeah.
so this individualized determination.
Would this be agreeable, excuse me?
Yeah.
To preface number 4 in the conditions of approval with just the statement, the code enforcement officer will be notified of each specific proposed use. No? And then, anything that's outside of the general categories of makers, craftsmen, would require more review, but just notifying the code enforcement officer what has been agreed upon with the releasing. Would that be
If we can
enough?
back up, and I don't know if the notice of decision would maybe just merely say professional offices for the purpose of artisans, makers, and crafts.
Okay.
Because now you haven't created a new category that's not in the ordinance,
Mhm.
but it narrows it down a little bit.
Okay.
What
Does that
I,
mean the doctor can't go in there now? Just saying, it's like,
Well,
It's,
I almost think the original way they had it was better.
but it's not a category in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Okay.
what they need to decide whether.
would you say, would you state that again, please, Brenda?
I would think the notice of decision could say professional offices
Yeah.
for the purpose of artisan, craftsmen, and makers, but then you're,
That's
I
what the.
disagree, because then you
Well,
went
maybe-
against every example that's in the ordinance.
Hold on. Are you just saying that this permit, the permit that is being issued for this facility would say professional offices for the purpose of artists, craftsmen, and makers?
or to include.
Yes, to
Okay, that's
include
fine.
is
That's all-
better.
That's totally fine.
To
And
include.
That's fine, I like that. I like that a lot better than what it was before.
Yeah. You're saying professional offices, which lists all that laundry list of attorneys and all those people. Not that attorneys aren't professional officers, but we won't get into
If I
that.
moved my office in there tomorrow, they wouldn't have to come back in front of the planning board.
Yeah.
It's allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
But maybe, okay, wait a
So
second.
maybe we can take Brenda up on that offer because she's just saying, here's a path forward that's going to make her comfortable.
To-
I think that's a good idea, Brenda.
That makes me
It's
very
straightforward
comfortable.
and simple.
There are two things that I would just, when you put in a notice of decision that they notify me of the use, that makes it sound like they're just letting me know.
Yeah.
That They're not, I don't have any voice in it, they're just letting me know. And it needs to be approved. And it needs to be, if it's a specific use that isn't allowed in the district, then I cannot approve it.
Mhm.
I just want you to
That's exactly what is not allowed. The ordinance does not authorize that to occur for the code enforcement officer to be making individualized
Right.
use
And
determinations.
we'll come back.
Okay, so are we saying then, the applicants propose to repurpose blah, blah, blah into professional offices to include individual studios for artists, craftsmen, and makers? Is that what we're saying? And take out the words to be understood as?
That's fine. I
Should
mean,
it say
that's still
and
acceptable.
to include?
I'm sorry?
Should it say and to include?
Either way,
Well, just to make sure that the professional officers are included.
Yeah.
Right.
And to include? Okay, I don't care. I mean,
And then because I don't have the authority to approve a use, if it's not a use that's allowed in the residential district, then I'll come back to you. Correct?
Yeah, what the code enforcement officer has the authority to enforce the ordinance. So if there is a use that's going on there that is not an artist, a craftsman, or a maker, or another professional office, then you can say, you're operating outside of your permit.
I will agree to that because the artisan, craftsman, and maker is in the eye of the beholder. What you think is art, I may not.
Well, there's gonna be a hard, if you do like an NOV, it's gonna be kind of hard because for those issues. But I guess if they put in the craft beer, which is not allowed, it's gonna be a clear cut case.
That's why I like the idea of generally accepted trades or generally accepted.
I mean, I just don't think so because, I'm just respectfully, I'm just saying because remember, commercial, industrial, all those, the whole definition of
Yeah.
fabricating stuff for sale or service to the general public is not allowed. You can't put like the Royce Bumper place in there. You can't put in, a fencing company or something like that. You just can't do it. It's not allowed. So those are generally accepted trades, I guess.
okay.
So Dawn, can you read what you wrote down, Brenda?
Well, what I wrote down under findings and conclusions, just the first part, it says the applicants propose to repurpose the school, blah, blah, into professional offices and to include individuals, studios for artists, craftsmen, and makers. If the use, and then I just scribbled here, wanted to add a sentence in there. If the use is, I could put it in later, actually, but we should put it in here too. We could say, if the use is not an authorized use in the residential district, the applicant must return to the planning board for approval.
And I don't think we can need to say that it's gonna be.
Well, no, then that use is not authorized.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to prove
Just
that.
state the obvious there.
But also keep under conditions of approval, number 4, in the event that a studio is rented for a purpose that's not conform to the activities, the understood activities of artist, craftsman, maker, applicants have to inform the planning board for review and approval.
I think you ought to add in there, in the event the studio is to be rented for a purpose that does not conform to the authorized, or something about the use of professional offices to include the activities of an blah, 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 blah.
Or you say paragraph,
Yeah,
whatever that previous paragraph.
well, it's not bad to repeat this.
So number 4 said if the activity doesn't conform to artisan, I would rather be if the activity isn't an allowed use in the residential.
Okay, no, okay.
Because there again, that artisan, craftsman, and maker is very subjective. And I think the residential district isn't at all subjective.
I think we can do this.
How would you word that again, Brenda?
Number 4,
Mhm.
you said if the proposed activity doesn't fall within the artist, maker, and craftsman, I never get that in the right order. Instead of that, because that's so subjective,
Mhm.
if the proposed activity isn't allowed use in the residential district. And you can't say they can't do it, they could seek a contract.
Right.
So it's not that they can't do it, it's a different group, right?
You got that?
We're be fine with that.
Well, all I can say is, I think hindsight's great. Maybe we should have gone contracting this in the first place, or maybe not, I don't know. It's just the ordinance is not too specific. Just for information, which maybe you already know, the Ordinance Review Committee is starting through the ordinance, but the way our charter reads, this can only changes have to go to general elections, which is every 2 years. That's currently in the town charter. So the Ordinance Review Committee now is working, and I'm just an ex officio member, so you don't have to take my words for being anything except comments. But trying to get some specific activities lined up that will change the ordinance so they can meet the timeline to be able to go to voters in November of '24. And I think, as Brenda has shown there at those meetings, and as I've observed also, there's a lot of things in the land use tables that need to be looked at and maybe revised, because some are, there's some inconsistencies. Other towns have more specific ordinance, but we got to stay with what we got. We can't change the whole ordinance overnight. We got to live with this ordinance. The planning board has to follow it. We cannot give any variation. I mean, what do you call it? We can't issue we can't do anything that's not in the ordinance. We're not supposed to, we shouldn't, we don't do it as far as I know. But hindsight's great. Maybe this should have been contract. If this wording can work for the applicants and for Brenda, I think that would be very helpful to move this project forward.
It might be the best thing you can do now at this point.
Well, just want to get the language of condition 4 a little bit clarified. And just as an aside, the overhaul of the alignment zoning ordinance at its earliest would be 2026.
Probably.
Some sections I think will be in front of folks this time next year, but to get it done right, it's going to take that much time given the charter. Okay, again, condition 4, if a proposed use is not permitted within the residential zone.
I'll show you afterwards. I think what she was asking was if the proposed use falls into a category that is not permitted in the residential zone.
It's not
I don't even
authorized.
know if it's necessary to say that, I tell you the truth.
It sounds, yeah. I guess-
It may be redundant, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
hurt to put it in there.
I
if you
mean, it
wanted
could
to.
be made clear, if it falls into a category which is not allowed in the residential zone, it should not be permitted.
Should all be permitted, or you seek?
You guys wouldn't be able to do anything anyway with it.
No, we can't. We can't give variances.
I mean, the example everyone keeps talking about is that artisanal, like, food and beverage, because it's specifically defined and it's not allowed. That's the example.
And
Right.
that was a definition that was adopted to allow for contract zoning.
How about something along the lines of the proposed uses must conform with those permitted within the residential zone?
That sounds good. That sounds good. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because you already made a finding that this type of thing
Yeah.
falls within professional.
Yeah, this is a
So-
little,
You're saying if you're doing something different, then that new proposed use needs to fall within the uses permitted in the residential zone? Is that what the,
That's, I believe,
Condition
what we're
says.
saying here.
Yeah.
Proposed
hopefully that wording
uses
won't be
must
specific.
conform to those permitted within the residential zone.
but that is a modifying, if a use other than what has been approved for artists, craftsmen, and makers is proposed.
Which is like a third.
That's a question.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're covered. You can't do commercial facilities.
I think plugging in that additional language kind of gets us into the murky area again.
I'm not suggesting any additional language.
Okay.
I was just asking a question of what the language says, because it's been sort of changed a couple times, so. It's a condition 4.
I think 4, do we keep the language in there and amplify it with this,
Let's get it right.
or replace? I'm kind of,
Yeah.
the proposed uses
Yeah.
must conform to.
Oh, did you give it to me? I have it.
Permitted within the residential zone.
I'm sorry.
I think that's what I'm saying.
Let's get it to where everybody agrees.
Yeah.
The wording here. Do this again.
So right now it reads,
Mhm.
in the event that a studio is to be rented for a purpose that does not conform to the activities of artist, craftsman, maker, the applicants will inform planning board, electrical inspector, state fire marshal for review and approved by each governmental entity. Said proposed uses shall comply with, shall conform to the uses allowed in the residential zone. Is that, I'm just trying to
Okay, yeah.
I'm just trying to capture what you said.
Replace what's in there with just the simple statement or amplify it with that statement? What's our sense? That's just merely saying the proposed uses must conform to those permitted within the residential zone.
Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that.
It's true, but.
Yeah.
It's true, but it doesn't cover the expanded concept of professional offices to include these activities, because we're hanging on those, but not limited to
Mhm.
words and the professional offices, because this is a professional, we're allowing this under, that's the only thing it would fit under is professional offices.
But I think the number 4, the way that Joe has stated it, is any use that isn't, I don't want to say isn't not allowed, any use that is prohibited.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
We don't prohibit though, we just don't, if it's not there, it's not allowed.
Yeah, you got it.
I don't think you can.
See, we don't really
We might not.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just,
I want to get to word, I think we need to get to wording so Brenda is confident that she can issue the code, the
I'd rather
permits.
have nothing to make it more.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
Maybe
Okay.
4 isn't even necessary. The thing is that they're proposing a use that is specifically not allowed in the residential district. I'm just not gonna write them.
Perfect.
Drop
I
4
think
altogether.
The way this was written is also
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I think the way it was written in the draft was also fine.
Agreed.
Why I didn't care.
Because looks like we're going full circle.
I mean, it says if it doesn't fit into those, they have to
Yeah.
notify everyone and all that.
But I don't want it that they're notifying people, because it sounds
No.
like their only obligation is to notify, not get
Okay.
approval.
I know.
You agree?
I got you.
I think that if it violates the ordinance, you put your own thing.
We gotta take care of it.
Done.
So leave
So
4
where's
as
leave
is.
us?
And
Guess it leaves us right back at the beginning.
leave condition 4 as
As
stated.
is.
Okay, and the only modification is on the first page with findings and conclusions, as Don read, the applicants proposed to repurpose the former Cousins Memorial School property into professional offices and to include individual studios for artists, craftsmen, and makers.
Anybody want any candy here? I got a lot of candy I'm trying to get rid of.
I actually am getting kind of hungry.
If it's allowed.
I move that the board approves the modified, revised notice of decision with that amended language under findings and conclusions.
I'll second that.
Hey, Dash, this is really good discussion. No, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. Excellent.
Good luck. Hope you're successful.
No, which means one. Yeah.
Has the assessor come over to see you guys yet? I'm gonna,
They were the first one there after we put the garage doors in.
you got it. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. God, what a mess. Jesus. I tell you.
Do you do any side work? You're just probably too darn busy.
I actually have my own company. I don't work for the town, I inspect.
Yeah, so they're trying to fix
Something of Bradford for today.
Jeez, we gotta keep continuing. Let's continue. We're still in a meeting. Hey, Kelly, we're still in a meeting, supposedly.
I'm sorry for the interruption, Brad. Brad. I hope you don't mind me possibly speaking out of turn here, but one of the things that we've been considering is the bylaws for the planning board.
Yep.
Would it be possible for you to review section 512 of the charter? Mhm.
Discussion on conditions here.
It's 512 of the charter, and 823 of the
Okay.
zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Whether or not there is a conflict between the two. That's kind of the discussion going back and forth between ourselves and the select board. I think it's one thing that's a given is that the charter supersedes the zoning ordinance, and both supersede any policies adopted by the select board to carry out the zoning ordinance and the charter.
Yep.
So they've adopted an interim hiring policy that I think can take into consideration 823 in the zoning ordinance and not be in conflict with 512 of the charter. Just like to get your opinion on that, please.
What is this? This is a hiring policy?
Yeah, recruitment for new members of the planning board. As 8.23 says, there's a conversation that occurs between the applicant and the current board members. Recommendation goes to the select board. And with the interim recruitment policy, I see no conflict with the town manager doing the recruitment, running it by us, transmitting our recommendation along with her recommendation to the select board for a decision as to membership.
There's a policy, there's a written policy on this too?
I believe so.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just have a tiny question. I don't want
Go ahead.
I just wanted to find out about getting a copy of the approved, the signed, written determination and how that would work.
Uh-huh.
We'll have it rewritten, what, 7 days?
Yeah, what happens is we rewrite this, it has to be approved, we have to vote on it, approve it. The wording, we should probably, maybe we already.
No, you just approved
Okay,
the
it's already
wording,
done,
yeah.
okay. Has to be written up and it has to be taken to the York County Registry of Deeds by the town. And then it takes them about a week to send it back. This is after it's signed and notarized here at the town hall. It goes to York County Registry of Deeds. People out there, blah, 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 do their thing. And then they send it back here, presumably a week later or thereabouts. And then the original should be sent to the applicants.
Okay. So is that it? Okay. I didn't realize that you record all of the planning board decisions.
Are you
No.
looking just to get a copy
Yeah.
of your records?
Oh.
Maybe after they write it up, they could email
Yeah.
it to you?
Yeah, I just want to get a copy.
You get it
Would that
online.
work?
It's.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I think when they record it out there,
No, yeah, absolutely. Once it's recorded, but
no,
I'm
I'm
just
saying
talking
once you take it out there, I'm pretty sure they put it right online.
If you
Actually,
email,
but
I think,
Julie.
admin@CE,
Admin CEO, I'll write it
she
down.
can email it to
Julie.
you after it's on.
You're Julie?
I'm Julie.
Okay, you have spoke on the phone, yes. Okay, I'll send you an email so you have my email. You can-
Pass it. Get rid of this.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
No,
not
no
a
worries.
big deal.
So someone will send me this policy to look at too, or Lindsay.
Yeah,
The proposed bylaw,
the proposed one.
I can send it tomorrow. It's like a-
Oh.
Oh, it's proposed by law.
No, no.
I'm looking at.
No,
Based
no,
on the ordinance.
we're on different things here, aren't we? What are we talking about?
Well, I
You're
just
talking about
said-
different, something different.
Yeah, I just asked,
Based on the
well,
chart.
with respect to the bylaws, there is maybe a difference of interpretation
Oh,
over, that particular part of our 823 in the zoning ordinance. And how does it conflict with 512 of the new charter? If it does, so be it. But I think
So it's
personally.
between the two of those two things that you want me to look
Right.
at. Okay.
If you please. Thanks.
I also found something that kind of caught my attention. If we look up under the charter, on section 3, it says board members,
no.
which, going back and looking at order of precedence, where it doesn't specifically state the select board, it says board members, would that not be relevant to all members of a board
No.
versus a committee?
I have no idea what
I think
section
that's
we're
the
talking
further
about.
on.
I
Am I wrong?
believe so, because I was watching the last selectmen's meeting and
No.
looking on, I got the charter on one, I've got the ordinance on another, running 4
Getting off
monitors.
date.
And that just caught my attention. You
Yeah,
know,
I don't even know what sections we're talking about. I'm sorry. Yeah,
No.
I can- Is that
Never
the same
mind.
sections that?
It's a different, it's a town charter, but it's at the very beginning, section 3.
Okay, since Rustic Dreams isn't here, we'll go on to the next thing, which is CEO updates.
Yeah.
I almost think that Rustic Dreams, they brought in, a revised septic plan that shows that they're okay for their capacity of 70. They brought that into me. I think they think that it was that and something else they think covers it. I haven't had a chance to tell them that I still think they need a site plan review. So, I'll bring that back to you next meeting.
Brad, thank you for coming.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you.
Most helpful.
Excellent, thank
Big
you.
help.
All right, I'll see you around.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think.
So septic has been updated.
And what I did, I know Sam had asked, I did, I don't think I brought it, I'm sorry. I did go into the tax, the assessor's comments, and it looks like, the previous property owner, it's the assessor, I made you copies too. But it was put up for sale in 2018, they bought it in 2019, they didn't ask for a CO until 2021, so that's 3 years it was. So I think,
One
Use
thing,
has expired.
one thing also, the maps that I provided showing the Google timeline of the property. And just this past year, they added over an acre of pavement without any stormwater treatment plans or calculations that they know of.
I do know that there's it's in the ordinance that increased parking comes before planning board.
Oh, gosh.
I read that, thank you.
Okay, we have minutes. From October 18th, 2023. Everybody get to read them? I'll make a motion to accept them as written.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
And you have 2 sections of minutes, one for the public
Yep.
hearing, one for the meeting.
We have the October 18th planning board meeting minutes. Those are public hearings in here. Everybody get to read these?
Right.
We'll make a motion to accept them as written. Any discussion?
Second.
I wasn't here.
All in favor of accepting them?
Aye. What time is it getting to be?
6:38.
My oldest granddaughter keeps sending me pictures. I watch the buses like stop.
I brought Dana Gagnon notice of decision. If everybody had a chance to look at it,
That was me.
there was one correction that I caught, that under findings and conclusions, it said the applicant proposes to operate a medically aesthetic
Oh.
spa. So I fixed it to say the applicant proposes to operate a state vehicle inspection station on the property. So if that's acceptable to the board.
Yeah, the spa's on the other side of town.
Yeah, that's true. So if that's acceptable, if you want to sign that, that can go.
Is everybody happy with the
Yes.
decision?
I'm happy with it.
Thank you, Don. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I did find one other notice that had not been sent out, and that was the Bartlett Pines subdivision. with the amendment for the abandonment, so
Is that,
it's been signed,
Oh,
but
it
I
has-
still have it.
it hasn't been what, taken to,
Hasn't been
No.
recorded.
hasn't been
Hasn't been
recorded yet?
recorded.
Okay.
So that one with the original amendment, the original abandonment certificate will go with the same,
After you get the check.
with the check,
Right.
and we'll send Dawn for ice cream. Thank you.
In MX 207, they should be coming in.
I,
I don't know what the holdup is, but.
my daughter got married last weekend, everything else went out the window
Okay,
the last
that's-
couple of weeks, so I didn't even contact them. But I will, if they're on my schedule now. But yes, their activities should have ended last weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, they should be done. That's when.
You know, I'd like to get this done, because I feel if it drags on too long,
Yeah,
I'll
well-
have to stop from A0. We really don't want them to do that.
No,
We don't want to do it
It's
either.
not the intention.
no,
And the extension that we provided expired yesterday.
yes.
Right.
So they can't start up in the spring.
Well,
No.
better let them know. That's all you say. Do you want to talk about these bylaws at all?
Yes, it's more in the bylaws now, Don.
Okay, okay, I've created another rock. This might be the right rock, I'm not sure. But anyway, what I think you have in your packet is the changes from what we approved in August. And I can quickly run through those, and then if you're in the mood to vote for that,
Go ahead, Don.
if you are in the mood, I just happen to have a clean copy and a transmittal letter that could be sent to the town manager.
Okay.
But let me go through it real quickly. Okay, on page 1, just down at the bottom there, allegations of bias in open session, taking out the other words. Okay, on page 2, this has been a bone of contention, but the wording that I put in there was to appointments to the board, blah, 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 and in accordance with the town of Lyman Municipal Charter. And leave out that part about recommendation from the board because they would not accept that. So, I mean, I'm not happy particularly, but that's too bad. I don't have a vote. So I took that out. 2.5, where we talk about permanent vacancy on the board, referring to the planning board. That's right now, the select board is appointing members to the planning board as either permanent members or alternates. So I took that portion out. That means if a permanent member leaves, the alternate does not automatically move up to be a permanent member. Okay. On 3.4, I made it, the secretary is responsible to coordinate all minutes, blah, blah, blah. Not. Yeah. Oh, what the hell did I put in there for? I think that's right. Okay, yeah, coordinate, okay, we'll keep going here. 3.7, vacancies of officers, and this is redundant, but again, I don't have any votes. Listed in Article 3.1 will be filled using normal election procedures. So it doesn't do much one way or the other. Okay, 5.1, under planning board, clerk, change the clerk to administration. The planning board, the agreement now is that we will use the term planning board clerk. So the planning board clerk, in coordination with the secretary, blah, blah, blah. The planning board clerk, put that name in there. And then 5.2, the secretary shall maintain approved copies of the board bylaws and mission statement. And for whatever reason, the reports to the Board of Selectmen, that part were taken out. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, get it done with. 6.2, we took that out because they would like that taken out. And I don't think has to be in there in the first place, but it's okay. 7.1, the different wording there, the way it reads now is other or another, board meetings are held at a town office or another town approved meeting place. use, and then there was a question about the elementary school. I mean, there was a comment made that I got saying, well, we'd have to notify the library or the Gooders Mills if we wanted to use their facilities, but I think that goes without saying. But use of the elementary school, which we've never done, but it's possible, I suppose, shall be requested through the town manager. So if we're going to go to the elementary school, we go through the town manager. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. The next paragraph, I just changed Board of Selectmen to Select Board, which is more appropriate. Notice, and then further on down that 7.1, that cleaned up that a little bit. It says, notice of meeting shall be posted at the Lyman Town Hall and on all official town digital media platforms. That was a little weird, the way it was written before. Too many towns in there. And then I had one, request to town employees for posting board meetings shall be made in a timely manner. I don't have a problem with that either. I hope nobody else does. Okay, moving right along. Okay, under amendments, I added under 11.1, we talked about amendments. The bylaws may be amended, blah, 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 and then submitted to the select board for approval in accordance with the town charter, because that's what the town charter says. And then there were no other, I mean, from the August version, there's in the attachments, I took, a lot of that stuff was highlighted. It's the way there were no comments on that, as I understand it. And we're missing, of course, attachment 4, which is the wonderful table of consanguinity, because I can't make that come in and make it readable, but I know that Julie could probably extract that and put it in. So those are I think, I get around a little bit, but okay, we've gone back and forth. I went to the meeting with the select board, blah, 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 blah. We agreed, disagreed. Anyway, again, I don't have any votes, so I lost. But that's okay. I'm used to getting that. So I think this meets I hope this meets the comments that were submitted, which I think you've seen some. I think you've seen all of them are from the select board, which include the ones from the town manager, which include the ones from the select board. So I think all this, hopefully, if I got it right, that's it. Now, if I didn't get it right, I happen to have a clean copy of this, which if Rod wants to sign it, he could sign it. But I also, here's a letter I had written for Rod to sign if he wants to. I just said that the town of Lyman charter sections, blah, 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 states that board shall adopt bylaws subject to the approval of the select board. The planning board has reviewed the bylaws approved by the planning board in August 2023 and revised the bylaws to conform to comments provided by the town manager. The planning board voted to approve the revised bylaws at its November 1st meeting, blah, blah, blah. Attached for your review and referral to the select board for approval is a copy of the revised bylaws. Please provide any comments or questions in writing. And I'm going to attach the approved section, assuming it's approved. And then also I'm going to give, as a courtesy, give them a copy of the showing the changes. So the package is here. If you guys want to vote on this, then we can see if this rock flies.
Any discussion on it?
Just a quick one with Article 2, now with the elimination of 2.5, does 2.6 become 2.5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I didn't, the pagination, or the numbering has been corrected.
All
And same thing with 6. So that's all been corrected, unless I screwed it up, which is possible, but I don't think so. Even I can do, well.
I got some serious objections
Oh,
to
God.
1.4.
Wait a minute, no, why? 1.4.
1.4 bias open session. It's only come once
Right.
to this board. I thought that member was blindsided and that we should have had the ability, or we should have went into executive session to discuss it. Allegations of bias are very personal. They should not be blasted out. Now, if there is justified cause for the alleged bias, then it is brought back in open session and addressed. But just because someone has a beef against one of us and tries to drag us through the mud, we should have the right to investigate and, lay the facts out.
Well, there was some
So,
extensive
and that is a personal matter which
wording
the
that came
select
back.
board goes into executive session to discuss all the time. This is a personnel matter. There's an allegation of bias, which we all take serious.
Hey,
We need to be able to freely discuss it.
well, there was wording that came back from, and I'm not sure I have it, give you right this second. I thought I sent it out, but the comments out that stated the reasons for putting that or wanting to have that in open session. So that's
I
why, that's
watched
why I
the
changed.
selectmen's meeting and I was shaking my head.
Well, that's why I changed it.
But I'm just saying, I'm opposed to it. That's my
Okay.
view.
Okay.
The thing, Kelly, to remember, because it's municipal government, okay? If somebody makes a complaint on bias, they have a right to be in that executive session when it's discussed.
That's fine. I would not have a problem with that, so that all the questions can be asked. And then maybe answers come out that the person alleging bias would not state openly on the record in front of YouTube.
Oh, I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
You know, when you're become an official for a municipality, you lose your rights.
Mhm.
You know, that would be like telling General Milley that if he's going to strategize the war effort, he's going to invite his enemy in to listen in. And that's basically what the law does with municipal government. So, I mean, you're at
I'm
a
just saying, if it's
disadvantage.
good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It's a personal matter for the board. It should be handled in executive session. Once executive session is done, then we come out and have a public meeting. I'm just, personally, I got nothing to hide. But
Yeah.
if someone's gonna accuse me of something, I want to be able to explain it.
We are employees of the town too. You should have some,
Yeah.
some employee rights, right? You can't discuss personnel matters.
Yeah, I'm also Article 2 membership. I was interviewed, you were interviewed, almost all of us were interviewed.
That ship has sailed.
And to the best of my knowledge, there's only been one not recommended potential member of the board that ever went to the selectmen and was told, no, we don't want this person on the board because they were not a good fit. And we get along for the most part, great and wonderful. We don't agree on anything all the time, which is why we get along, because we understand, we compromise.
You can be wrong if you don't agree with me. That's okay.
Exactly. And once I thought I was wrong about you, but I was
Yeah.
mistaken.
You know, but Cecile's right. If it's a personnel matter, it can't be discussed in the public.
Well, the only thing I was reading, there was an email that, shit. I didn't forward on to you because I thought it said the same stuff we'd already talked about, but this was from the town manager who had discussion points regarding planning board bylaws, and I had sent the stuff previously, and it said under 1.4 bias, this one here says, both boards agree, it said both boards agree discussion of bias should be in open public sessions and remove language pertaining to going into executive session. I thought we had agreed that we could do that, but so that's why I've changed the wording, okay? So, I mean, there's pros and cons in the whole thing. I would,
No matter what you put for wording, if it's a violation of state law,
It's violated.
it's a violation. So you can't do it. So you can write anything you want, but if it violates state law, you can't enforce it.
okay, but getting back to the wording here, I really don't want to go back and argue about going, I thought we had sort of agreed with that, but maybe I'm wrong.
I wouldn't argue with it. I'd leave it the way it is. They can't enforce it if it's illegal.
There's no point in disagreeing because they're not gonna vote, they're not gonna allow it anyway. They've already.
Right, I'm just voicing my
Okay,
objections to
all
it.
right, gotcha.
And the other one was on membership 2.5.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, I'm the only permanent member that has stepped down to an alternate. And when I did that with discussion from the board.
Yeah.
We decided that the best alternate that should step up to fill my shoes at the time was the person who was most active and most knowledgeable versus, no disrespect, the lesser one. So who knows who's best suited to move to the permanent position than a recommendation of the board members? I mean, no disrespect to the select board, they may or may not be watching, they may or may not review it later. We deal with each other on a regular basis. So I like the idea that we can make a recommendation that the next person happens, Bill, you moved up, or Cecile, you moved up, that's our recommendation.
I think Don and Joe were right. You're not gonna force them to change their mind.
I am just voicing my opinion in this great republic we have.
Along these lines, I still have problems with essentially being, if not instructed, directed, encouraged to ignore something that's in the zoning ordinance 823.
Right.
Exactly.
But I asked Brad to look into it. If he finds that there is a conflict, so be it. If he finds to the contrary, then we can go back to making an amendment to this and proposing it to the select board, see what they do with that. That's all.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the comments was made is, well, there may be confidential information on the application. As quasi-employees of this municipality, we are under the same confidentiality restrictions as a select board member.
Mhm.
We swear an oath every time we're appointed.
Mhm.
Out of that is confidentiality.
We're talking to the choir here. Is there anything?
No.
I'm just saying, it's
Does,
adamantly object to those 3 points.
So,
Motion to accept?
I'm gonna make a motion to accept these as
revised.
rewritten.
I'll second that.
I hate to ask this again, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I happen to have a
Opposed?
original, okay.
Opposed?
Okay.
There is one, I noticed one typo on a page that doesn't have a signature on it, just a numbering one. I'll fix that. I thought it did it automatically, but it didn't.
Okay, that's 2-5.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Screwed that up.
Let me sign that?
Yes, please. On the front, there's two places there, Rod.
Okay,
The one at the end and the one in the front.
okay.
And they'll fix that. I'll get that corrected and we'll get it done with another. Hmm. You know, there's probably some more room on the comprehensive plan committee if anybody wants to get in on that opportunity.
Thanks, but no thanks.
How many are on it right now? Okay.
4. I was supposed to be an ex officio member, but somehow I got appointed. I may not, I don't know. Well, no, I'm serious. It needs probably needs a little more, some more people on it because we'll see.
A couple nights back, it was the first meeting.
I'm sorry.
A couple nights back was the first.
Yeah,
meeting.
I think it was on YouTube. I don't know. I haven't looked.
Anything else you wanna throw into the mix, Brenda?
I think I'm
Julie?
I'm overdone.
I'm
Oh.
done.
You done?
Can I make a motion?
If I may, anything new from Harper on the subdivision?
Oh, yes. He emailed me, I don't know, Monday or something. He doesn't think by reading in the ordinance that
Thank you.
the roads need to be paved. So if somebody can send me the exact wording, if it's in the subdivision one or in the zoning ordinance, it says that they do, that I can point it out to him.
Okay.
Find that.
That was it.
Okay.
That's the only thing I got so far.
Anything from the folks up our cottage, Maxon's about Army Corps?
I'll put feelers out this week. and Thursday.
I don't need to read this out. You can just email me where it shows. I know the feeling.
A lot of people think that.
they think they're going by the street acceptance policy.
No, subdivision orders, minor and major.
Subdivision is-
Subdivision regs.
That's where it says it, as far as the paved roads. You see, he's talking about the roads in the subdivision, right? Yeah, he's wrong.
But I need to point it out to him.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Let me show you.
Okay, well, I'll make a motion, we close the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
All right. Help yourself to the candy,
Thank you.
please. Hey.
It'll pass.
I'll throw myself on the sword and take the candy.
Take it, take it, take it.